Hello everyone, my name is Billy Bukako and I am your host for this podcast, Big Biz with Billy Bukako. This is the first episode of our official first season. Yes! Yeah! In this season, we have traveled the length and breadth of our country to bring you inspirational entrepreneurs, to bring you premium guests into this platform. This we all thank to our wonderful sponsor, the official sponsor of our first season, Watility. Please go to watility.energy to view all their wonderful solar solutions, and you can get one for your business or your home. Alternatively, you can also go to our website, www.bigbiz.africa. Go to our competitions page, follow the instructions on the page, and you could stand a chance to win incredible solar solutions for your business and your home from Watility. Please also like, subscribe, share, and follow our content on all our social media platforms. In keeping with the theme of the month of August, which is Women's Month, we are bringing you the founder and CEO of Cabinet Farming. Cabinet Farming is a farm in Matatiele in the Eastern Cape. We have today with us Mrs. Nonopa Tenza, who is a philanthropist and also a recipient of the Presidential SMME Awards for the year 2023. Nonopa, welcome to the show, Sisi.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are actually our first guest for the first episode of the first season of the show.
Wow, what
No
an
pressure.
honor. What an honor.
No pressure, yes. We're actually quite honored to have you here.
Thank you for
So
having me.
it's the theme, it's August, it's Women's Month, and we are talking women in business.
Okay.
But more specifically, we're talking about women in farming, and you are one such woman. And I think before we get into that, we would like to find out more about yourself. Could you tell us a little bit more about who Nonopa is, where do you come from, and what really sparked, the passion to go into farming?
Okay, great. Nonopa, my name is Nonopa Tenza. I was born in Lusikisiki in the Eastern Cape. That's where I was raised, that's where I grew up, that's where I went to school. And then I went to the then University of Transkei for my degree, which had nothing to do with agriculture. I studied accounting, then went to UNISA, and later on in my life I spent some time abroad in Scotland, and I also studied there. I am a wife, a mom, a daughter, a sister, an aunt, like everybody else. And as you say, I also run a farming business called Cabinet Farming. It's quite interesting that I never knew that I would be where I am right now, running a farming business as I studied accounting. But how it actually started is I actually call myself a serial entrepreneur. Meaning which throughout my time in corporate, because I spent a lot of time in corporate, I've always had like side hustles. And the farming business also started as a side hustle. How it started is that my husband actually comes from a farming background in that his father was a farmer, and after his passing 10 years ago now, the farm was just sitting and not doing much, and him being the oldest son, so obviously he had to sort of step in and look after things for the family, yes. So as his assistant or helper, helpmate, I got involved as well. And then that's really when it started, because I then said to him in 2017 now, I'm like, why can't we start? Like get something on the side, like kettle and whatnot. That's how it started. It was a side hustle. And then up until in 2021, I left corporate on a full-time basis to run the business.
On the farm.
Yeah.
So actually quite interesting. So you studied accounting and you ended up in agriculture.
Yes.
And have you found that that has helped you somehow? I mean, we work a lot with entrepreneurs, and we know when it comes to finances, the accounting side is not, they tend to be more technical, but yours was the opposite.
Yeah.
Right? So did you find it more helpful, and what strategies did you, employ in order to capacitate yourself to get the supplementary skills that you obviously didn't have?
Yeah. So I actually coming from rural areas, right, in the Eastern Cape. So I was familiar also with like livestock. I grew up around cattle, sheep, and also just crop growing, etc. Even though, I mean, obviously it was on a subsistence basis.
Yeah.
So it was not a completely new field for me. And I actually studied agriculture in junior secondary. We used to call it junior secondary during our times.
What would junior secondary be nowadays again? It would be high school, right?
Yes, because they immediately just go to high school.
Kids, high school.
So junior secondary, I actually did agriculture up until standard 7. So it was not really an
Grade
unfamiliar.
9. Standard 7 is
grade 9, yes. So it was not an unfamiliar environment. But I found accounting to be very useful. So I've spent most of my corporate life in banking. So that understanding, one of finances, what do you need to do, record keeping, how do you keep records, and also how do you get your business ready for funding. So that has been very, that has been useful for me, because having spent a lot of my time within the corporate and investment banking space, I was actually on the other side in credit, sitting in credit committees. I know those processes, so that has really helped me. But from a technical side from a farming perspective, I've attended short courses, and also it helps that for you to surround yourself with people who have got skills. Yes, who've got skills. So for instance, my husband, having grown up in farming, obviously he's got that understanding, and also the farm manager we have now is actually somebody who's quite seasoned within the farming space. So that really helps to always surround yourself with people who close those gaps that you don't have. But also you need to have an understanding of what's happening. Now when we discuss agriculture, people actually get surprised to say, are you sure you didn't study agriculture? I didn't.
Yeah,
I didn't.
because you surround yourself with people that you can learn from.
Yes.
Which is also quite important, as understanding that as the CEO of any business, you are not going to be the master of each and every aspect of that business. But also bringing people in does not mean that you relax.
No.
You have to also capacitate yourself and understand the work that they do. I know with there's a whole portfolio within the farm. You don't only focus. Can you just take us through some of the things that from what sort of farming you do, and what other things form part of your product and services portfolio?
Okay. So it is a mixed farming business where we do livestock and we also do crops. From a livestock perspective, we do cattle, so that's beef cattle, and we also do sheep, and then we also grow maize, both yellow maize and white maize, and also we do sugar beans as well. And now we are transitioning, because my dream is not only just to focus in primary agriculture, is to transition into agro-processing, into secondary agriculture. So now we are transitioning into a milling of the actual maize we grow, so that we can crush the maize and sell it for livestock feed, for people who are in poultry farming, etc. And also the white maize, then you are able to mill it, and then it's used for human consumption as well.
Yes. That's quite interesting. I know you're also involved in other community outreach projects. Can you tell us more about the work that you do? I know there's also mentoring and coaching somewhere. And if you're a lady, you're a guy, you're young, you want to get into farming, you better listen to what she has to say.
So, and I always say that when one was really interested in getting into farming, one could have chosen to farm anywhere, right across South Africa. But I think what drew me in us focusing really in that particular farm is that one, it's in the deep rural Eastern Cape, where obviously, there's high unemployment rates, there's poverty levels, etc., etc. So for me, that was what sort of drew me to that particular farming area to say there's something that one can bring to this area. Because obviously we don't get educated just for ourselves. It's important that you always give back to the community you come from. So where I am now, obviously in terms of my education, my skills, my networks, I leverage that for the benefit, for instance, of the farmers around me to say, if I'm able to unlock a huge off-taker, meaning which somebody who will buy our produce, whether it's from the cattle, sheep, or even the maize perspective, then I'm able to bring these other farmers into that opportunity. And then they're able to tap into a market they would not have necessarily been able to tap into. That's the first thing. And also just sharing best practices to say what works best, what should we be doing, what should we be focusing on, and also helping other farmers as well, because as we grow, we've been able to procure most of our equipment within the farm, and then other farmers obviously don't have access to that, because farming is quite capital intensive. You need a piece of equipment for everything you do within the farming space. So then with the equipment we have, we are able to offer what is called mechanization services for the other farmers around us, and also then just working together, creating jobs, for instance, seasonal jobs, permanent jobs, and also offering, my other passion is really offering internship for young people, because I've found that there are young people who go to these agri colleges or TVET colleges, and then they are required to spend at least 18 months within a farm to get that experience before they can get that qualification. So that's my mission, to always make a point that I've got those interns. Fortunately, for instance, we have one who's going to be finishing now in a month's time, finishing his 18 months. So that's really a proud moment for us as Cape Net Farming to contribute that way. So those are some of the things that we do around, just to make sure that we uplift the community we work with. Not so long this week, actually, we had learners from a nearby primary school. They do grade 6 and grade 7, like 77 of them. They came in a bus, just coming to see the farm, just to open their minds to say what other options are there, you know. So that was also another proud moment for us as
and especially coming from the rural areas where farming is not, you know, it's something that it's an everyday life, you know, whether it's a backyard garden, subsistence, or even commercial sometimes. I actually, you also mentioned something around funding, and I want us to go into that. There's a whole notion that, I mean, funding is a problem across any sector of business. How did you manage to source funding to be able to get all of these things to a point where you're even able to, you know, offer mechanization services, because that is also quite capital intensive?
Yeah, sure. Funding is a big thing, is a big thing for all businesses. But then in the agri space, it's even more of a challenge, because not many funders actually understand agriculture, and not many funders actually offer funding into the agricultural space, because agricultural space, remember, is not your day-to-day where you get cash inflows every day, you know. And it's interesting that the past year I probably spent looking at different funding options, and I've probably interacted with about 20 organizations just looking for funding, and it is such a big hassle in terms of just obtaining funding. One, most funders, they don't understand agriculture, therefore they don't fund it. But others, the requirements are huge. The requirements are huge. I mean, as I said to you, I've spent my life in banking. I understand banking. I understand credit, how lending actually happens. But but it actually has been such a huge battle even for me. And I always wonder about people who don't have
even understand, you know.
How do they actually tap into funding? So it's actually quite a struggle. But from a Cape Net farming perspective, it's only now that we're actually tapping into external funding. Everything else had to be funded from our own pockets, from our own pockets, taking money from school fees, savings, etc. And the main reason really was that the farm where my father-in-law used to farm, the farm that we're using now, is actually leased from the state. Right. So after his passing, the lease has expired. then it's such a bureaucratic process to
actually
request,
reinstate.
to request the government to transfer the lease to us. And without that piece of paper, you cannot tap into any funding, even the funding from like state funding institutions, because they still have a requirement that you need to produce something, either a lease
there's
agreement.
land.
Yes, because they need to be assured of security of tenure over the land, and I understand that. So, and we are still in that process, but we had to get to a stage where the department gives us a letter that says, yes, we are actually in the process of giving them the list, and then with that, then we're able to unlock funding. So it's a tedious process. It takes forever just to get funding. And I mean, our government institutions, I understand that, especially I mean the development funding institutions, that they are inundated with applications, etc.
Yes.
But the impact on us as business owners is huge, because when I apply for funding today, I don't want to wait a year before I actually get that funding, because my business is suffering.
It's suffering at this point.
Yes. But that's been my experience. So it's quite a big one. It's quite a big one.
That's tough, and I think I want us to touch on the land aspect, because I know that's also quite a headache, you know, for a lot of people. You know, especially for people like myself. I was born in a township. I don't really have a rural area where I can say I'll go, and you know, to navigate that, you know, becomes an issue. But I want to just touch on the funding. Are there any funding mechanisms or funding instruments that are geared towards women who want to get into the space, specifically women?
I wouldn't say they are geared specifically to women per se. The only thing that I've seen is that with government, obviously, everything that is happening, there will be that quota that says everything that is happening, at least 30% must go to women. So there's that preferential, you find that there's preferential funding that's allocated for women, for young people as well. So at least as women, you benefit from that. But I haven't really seen much of that. I think there are like one or two institutions where they will say it's just for women only, but mostly you compete with everybody.
That's good.
Yeah.
Oof, it really is. I mean, I'm thinking it must be daunting to even consider, you know, going into it. But do you find it easier or more difficult to be in this space as a woman? Or it's not different to being a man or anything?
It is, in that obviously people always expect a man. So for instance, when I get emails, they will say, "Dear Mr. Tenza," you know? Or when people phone me, somebody phoned me actually this week, "Hello, Tata," because they expect to be a man on the other end, you know? And obviously, as a woman, they start, I think they treat you with suspicion at first, up until they get to see that, okay, you know what you're talking about, etc. And then they start opening up. So as women, you always have to sort of show up and make sure that you are there, you are known, you know what you're doing, and you know what you're talking about, and you should not be intimidated that just because you are a woman. And I always say, I mean, I came into this space, I'm obviously not your typical farmer, because we know in South Africa that your typical farmer, the average age is like 62, is white, and it's a man. But when you are a woman, you have to come in and own your space. You must know what you're doing, and then be confident to just go out there and do what you need to do.
That's interesting. So I want us to go back to the issue of land.
Yes.
We all know, I mean, it's the biggest barrier to entry. And you've already told us how you mitigated that, right? Or you're in the process of, getting that. What advice would you have, for prospective farmers where land is concerned? What is the best way for them to get access to land?
And I mean, land is very important in farming compared to most businesses, obviously. So I mean, there are options out there, in that you find that There are farms that are being leased, so you need to be on the lookout. Even, I mean, the Department of Agriculture would advertise farms that are being leased, etc. And then there's also communal land that you find that it is being leased. So someone just needs to be on the lookout, obviously, to say, where can I lease land, or where can I buy a farm, because there are funders now that are looking to fund people.
Wow.
But the one thing that's important, though, is that you need to show that you know what you're talking about. There are many people now that are interested in farming, but they've never farmed in their day, in a day in their lives, you know. So they need to start somewhere, whether maybe you lease a piece of land yourself using your funds, and then you can show what you can do, because most funders come once they see that the bus is moving. Yeah, because most people are like, oh, I love farming, I want to get into farming, where can I get funding?
Idealistic.
Yes, where can I get funding? Nobody's going to fund that. You need to, even if it's a small piece, a small patch, you are planting cabbages, you show that you've got a market, you know what you're doing, you are producing a product that somebody's willing to pay for. And then once there is that track record, then you are able to unlock funding, get more land, etc., etc.
Yeah, on exactly that point, you talk about markets, right? You're supplying currently to various markets.
Yeah.
How easy was it for you to get into that space, to break into those markets?
So it's not easy, right? It's not easy because you find that. So there are different markets. So for instance, when I started, I found that in the area where I was, most people sell their maize. You find that they are like middlemen, what we'd call middlemen. Okay. People that will just come buy the maize, then they go find markets somewhere, sell it, etc., or for export, etc. And that's what I did at first as well. But what I didn't like with that is that obviously you are not dealing with big names, and it's people, for instance, even they don't even adhere to payment terms, etc., etc. And the risk, they're sort of agents. Okay. Yes, they're sort of agents. And the risk for me was to say, if these people run away with my money, what do I do? What recourse do I have? So for me, then I started looking for more, if I could call them credible off-takers, big brands, multinational brands. So those are the people that I supply to now. It's from a maize perspective, for instance, multinational brands. Even from a beef perspective, it's one of the biggest feedlots in Africa, basically. So those are the people. Or if you're dealing with agents like auctioneers, etc. But it has to be people that are established, and credible as well. So, but I mean, obviously, for when you are a farmer, you just need to do more of your research and find out from other people.
Understand also the compliance matters, because I believe in farming, certain off-takers will impose certain compliance issues that you need to.
Of course, and that's very critical, that compliance, making sure that your business is compliant, because even from a funding perspective, if you are not compliant, you're not going to get no funding, because the first thing they will be like, do you have financials? Are you registered with CIPIC? Do you submit your annual returns? And from a tax perspective, are you in good standing and all of that? So compliance is very important, and for me, that's actually what I did after I left my job to run the business, because obviously it was growing as a side hustle, but the compliance wasn't there because it was a side hustle, right? Nobody had time for it. But then I had to sit and clean up and make sure that everything is proper, and there are proper records, etc. Then that's when you're able to get the attention then of credible off-takers from that. And also, I mean, if you are in the vegetable space, etc., and you want to be able to supply your big retailers, they've got conditions of also in terms of the standards and norms that you need to, and compliance and certification that you need to have. So you will need to understand that, because obviously, I mean, if you are selling cabbages to a retailer, they need to know that cabbage, for instance, is not going to kill their customers, right? So those are some of the compliance things that somebody needs to start thinking about, to say, how do I ensure that I comply, so that I'm able to unlock markets and I'm able to unlock funding, because even funders will look for that to say, are you compliant? Yes.
Okay. Yeah. With all of this compliance, with all of these different aspects of the business that you need to consider, would you say that the advancement of technology has influenced the space, and how so? And also, as yourselves, as Cavenut Farms, are you guys embracing that?
Yes, I mean the technology is quite available around. Obviously, I mean as farmers as well, we do most of our stuff like your banking, whatever that you need to do. You need to have your records. So obviously, you need to. We don't do what our predecessors used to do, where you just write everything manually, etc. So you have to have proper records on your computers and whatnot, and then also look at stuff like drones. For instance, that's something that's very important, especially with the climate patterns we've been having. I mean, we've just come out now of El Nino, but the 3 years before that we had La Nina, which means more rain. So it was quite wet, and then you find that there are times where you can't actually get into your fields to do what you need to do. And with crops, everything is timed. Once you've planted, then you've got a certain window where you need to be doing something, you need to be spraying, or you need to be doing your fertilizer, etc., etc. But now, if it's wet, it means your tractors can't go in there. But then that's where drone technology, for instance, comes in that now it can just go in and does your spraying, etc. Yes, it sprays for you and does everything. And also even just with your livestock management now, there are apps that are available that you can use, which is where now you keep your records to say, okay, today this is the vaccine, maybe for instance, that we've
and it helps
given.
with your tracing,
yeah,
right?
then
For
you
even
are
your
able to trace.
when they come,
you've got proper records.
Got
you've got proper
like
records.
that.
Yes.
Like
So yes, we are adopting technology into farming as well.
That's actually quite nice. So I wanted lastly to check with you if there's any ladies out there who are considering to go into farming. What would be your word of advice?
My word of advice to ladies is that they must come. That's the first one. So I always encourage everyone who is interested to get into farming, right? And the reason is, I always say that when you're in farming, you can never run out of markets. People have to eat, right? It is often said that you might need your lawyer once in a while or your doctor once in a while, but you need a farmer at least 3 times a day for your breakfast, for your lunch, your supper. So we can never run out of markets. In South Africa, we've got 60 million people already that needs to eat. Across the globe, there's about 8 billion people that needs to be fed. So in farming, you can never run out of your market, but you just need to understand the value chain, right? Because some people, what they do is like, oh, okay, I get into farming, I've got a piece of land, they start planting, they don't even know where they're going to sell their cabbages to. And then come at harvest time, they don't know where to take it. And then it rots, etc. and all of that, yeah. So you need to do your proper research, understand where your passion is, and understand also that farming is high risk. Farming is high risk, I must say. So, I mean, for instance, especially with crop farming, with all the climate patterns we've been getting, we just got out of drought. We are going into a La Nina season. There are floods, there are hailstorms, etc. So one needs to be prepared that it's quite high risk, and also it's hard work. There's a lot of work that goes into farming, and also then you need to know what are your passions as well. You need to know what's your passion so that you can align your farming venture with the passion. Yes. Some people actually come to me and say, I actually have a piece of land at home, I don't know what to plant, or they've got ideas to say, oh, actually I want to do this. And I always say the first research you do in farming is to just scan the surrounding areas. Who is out there and what are they doing? Because it tells you that that is what thrives in that particular area. Yes. Because you can't come to Matatiele, for instance, where I am, and say, I want to grow sugar cane. No, it doesn't work that way. Yes. So you always...
there's already an established supply chain, a value chain in the area.
And
it makes sense if you tap into that.
Yes. And the climate.
The climate
and the soil in that area, etc., etc., etc. Yes. So, because, I mean, there are tropical areas and you can only do certain crops within a tropical area, and then there are other areas you can do certain crops. So there's a lot of research that goes into farming. Because you spend a lot of money, you need to make sure you do your proper research. Speak to people, listen. There are lots of YouTube videos. Get as much information as you can get. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. And lastly, how do we get hold of you and your products?
So I'm available on social media. So back to technology. Farmers are on social media as well.
And you've got a website, right?
Yes, we've got a website.
What's that web address again?
www.kevinot.co.za. We are also Kevinot Farming on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter as well. We are available, so anyone can reach us.
Nonopa, thank you so much. It's been an enlightening conversation. Definitely learned a lot, and I'm definitely going home today with a little bit more anxieties when I think about some of the things that you guys have to contend with in this space. But very important. I mean, we need to eat, and you know, with the population growth and everything, people like you really are the pillars of our society, and we thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope I've inspired more farmers to join farming.
Please, definitely.
Thank you. Thanks.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it from the first episode of the first season of your favorite podcast, Big Biz with Billy Bukako. Please do go to our website, www.bigbiz.africa, and go to the competitions page to stand a chance to win a solar solution from Motility. Also, join us for our first, the inaugural Power Your Business segment in 2 Wednesdays from today, where again we will be talking about solutions on how you keep your business powered 24/7 with Motility. It's been a pleasure being with you. Thank you so much.